Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. As you can see, I'm joined by James Benge, otherwise known as James Wenge, if you'd have just seen the the first attempt to getting this show started. But I am joined by James Benge, of course, of CBS Sports for Inside Arsenal. Extra time. James, how's it going, mate? All good?
Yeah, very well. I don't know how's your week of football freedom been going. I went to Margate for a couple of nights and enjoyed some chill time before Thomas Tuchel went and set the news cycle ablaze. What about you? You enjoyed the relative rest?
No, not really. To be fair, I just never enjoy these international breaks. I just want Arsenal to play all the time. I got to say, I just find them pretty boring. I try and immerse myself in the world of international football, but I just don't. I struggle to really. All I do is panic about Arsenal players getting injured, and that is basically how I enjoy my international breaks at the moment. Obviously, it's very different when the summer arrives and tournaments arrive. I get very, very much into it. I've travelled following England to World Cups before across the world, but just international breaks. I think as I'm getting older as well, I'm just really bored of them. I just don't find them that enthralling, I have to say. But yeah, it was I was at the presser for Mikel before the Southampton game. I think it was Kaya from Football London asked him, after what happened last time during the international break, what are you going to be doing during this one? And he's just like banged the table, touched wood, said he's going to pray that he got no more injuries because the last one was very difficult to take. And lo and behold, Bukayo Saka goes down. Gabriel Martinelli picked something up. So penny for Mikel's thoughts. His presser's tomorrow in the morning. It'd be interesting to see what he has to say about it then. But yeah, other than the international break, I don't know. I've not really been up to much. What was Margate like? All good? Whenever I think of Margate, all I think about is the Jolly Boys outings, Only Fools and Horses.
Same, much the same, but it is very different to that. Obviously, as you can imagine, with beardy people like me pop along, there must be something hipsterish happening. And we did indeed go to several nice cafes and restaurants that serve natural wine. It's fantastic. I would say anyone thinking about sort of a day out from London, it's perfect for that sort of 2 nights, 1 day thing where you get a few good meals out of it. Get yourself an Airbnb. Yeah, would recommend. Not, I know, appreciate not your side of London, so an inconvenient trip for you, I would imagine.
See, when you started talking about the beard, then I thought you were going to carry on the Only Fools
Oh
theme.
yeah, Uncle.
Albert. I didn't expect you to go into a hipster.
Well, I mean,
Direct.
Uncle Albert now would look. We would very much still fit in Margate, I have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Fit in anywhere. What a legend that guy was. Yeah, but look, it's Thursday. What time is it? It's 1:30 at the time of recording this. So about just over 48 hours away from Arsenal returning to action with that game against Bournemouth. We're going to talk about that in today's show. We'll start off with some discussion on Bournemouth. I think we'll look at who could start, some interesting decisions for Mikel Arteta to make. I suppose injuries are going to make some of those a little bit easier potentially than they might be. We'll talk about Thomas Tuchel's appointment. I've had a question from that, which I wanted to get your views on what that could mean potentially for some Arsenal players, particularly Ben White, which would be quite interesting to see if he can force his way back into the fold. We've got lots of other questions. Thank you so much to everyone who replied pretty quickly to this morning's show to get your questions in time for this one, because we are recording it a little bit earlier than usual. And so, yeah, well done. Thank you very much for being very quick on the draw there. So we'll start with Bournemouth, mate. And I mean, it's a big game. They're all big games, aren't they? And everyone's been getting in touch, sort of giving their thoughts on who should start and asking some questions. So I'll just rattle through a few of these before we sort of start the debate ourselves. We've got Bruce at the top says, a big game on Saturday. Bournemouth can't be underestimated. Arsenal lost out the title last year because of performances not against main rivals, but because of slip-ups against team we should beat comfortably. West Ham, Fulham put a strong team out against Bournemouth and make changes in the second half, giving game time to Sterling, Jesus, Wanyeri. We've got Brenda underneath there. So can we start Jesus on the right and bring on Saka to allow him some additional rest? Also start Wanyeri. So we've got people shouting for that Wanyeri there. After the Southampton game, the conclusion was Sterling and Jesus shouldn't both start while searching for form. We have also been keen on Wanyeri getting minutes. With this in mind, I'm surprised with the front line that you have gone for, Charles. I think it might well be one Mikel goes with, but I'm surprised you didn't go Wanyeri central, Trossard left. See, the one I went with, if Martinelli and Saka both didn't make it, I said
Right.
I said Sterling left, Jesus right, Havertz up top, and Trossard behind. And Tater down there says, hi, Charles and Benge. I thought this was an interesting one to talk about now. With Partey probably fit, Merino definitely fit, what do you think our midfield will look like on Saturday? And what is our strongest midfield three, in your opinions? In my opinion, Merino should come in. And that was from Tata there, which I thought was quite an interesting one, because we've yet to really seen Merino. We've seen bits and pieces from the substitutes bench, but this could potentially be a first start. He got a start for Spain, midweek. Got 30 minutes from the first game, then a start in the second game. And so that'll be interesting whether he will or not bring in Merino. But just in terms of the game as a whole this weekend, what would you think or suggest Mikel Arteta should do? And we'll start with presuming Martinelli and Saka are both path fit for this game.
Yeah, I mean, Lee Carsley didn't do him any favours, did he, by saying that Saka would probably have been fine for the Finland game, because we all know Mikel Arteta would absolutely be delighted if no one ever knew anything about the fitness of any of his players. Assuming Saka and Martinelli are fit, I think you need to go full strength against Bournemouth. I would very much disagree with anyone that doubts Bournemouth, and pretty much I'd say since Iraola really got to grips with this team, which kind of came a lot further down the line last season, they played like a European team. And I mean, if Bournemouth were called Brighton, none of us would be saying, oh, bring Nwaneri in, use this game to rest some players, give Saka a rest. You would go full bore. I mean, I think it's also worth bearing in mind that Shakhtar at the Emirates Stadium has, to me, a bit more of a look of a game where you could rest a few players, bring a few players in from the cold. So I don't see any logic to not really putting your strongest 11 out there. And I think especially for a game against Bournemouth, where maybe their midfield isn't the most physical, I would really like to see what would effectively be, the Trossard and Havertz front two, and Merino and Rice trying to dominate midfield and really impose themselves on meaning no Partey, really impose themselves on a relative weak spot in the Bournemouth side. So, yeah, I think really important to say, not one you can take for granted. I know their point tally isn't great this season, but I would be confident that if you have two strong midfielders up against Christie and Cook, is it Lewis Cook? You can really dominate that, and from there you can build the platform to win well, and then you can bring in Nwaneri, Jesus, Sterling from there on. But yeah, I mean, I suspect that probably is where your head would be at too.
Oh, 100%. I don't think you can underestimate Bournemouth at all. They will be tricky, and there's no way that Mikel will underestimate them either. He will not make changes for this game. If he's got everyone available, he will go as strong as possible. Like you, I agree. If there's going to be any game where he's going to make changes, it'll be Shakhtar on Tuesday ahead of the Liverpool game. But I think in these two Premier League games, you go full strength. Obviously against Liverpool next weekend, but certainly for this one. The Merino one's really interesting, I think. Obviously, Partey stayed behind, didn't go away on international duty. From the conversations I've had, the expectation is he will be available, same as Kai Havertz will be available for this game. This is what Mikel said about Merino just before the international break, isn't it? When he was describing him and what he's like, he said he's going to bring an unbelievable football brain. He's so intelligent. The way he decides and occupies spaces, he makes decisions, and it's very rare to see that. He's a really talented player in every phase, defending and attacking. He can do things that complements really well with the qualities we have in midfield. He'll bring physicality for sure, and he is a big threat. The moment he is in the opponent's box, you see that he is a big, big threat. We've not really seen that from him yet. Obviously, we've seen bits and pieces when he's come off the bench, but he's almost been sort of keeping things tidy. He's won his duels, or the majority of his duels. We know that's his bread and butter, and he's done that in the time he's been on the pitch. But it's been pretty obvious, I think, that he's been still getting up to speed. The international break will have helped him. He's one of the few players you're like, because initially I was like, why has Spain called him up? They shouldn't have done that. And then a few of the viewers on here actually sort of called me up on it in the comments, like, no, I think it's good they've called him up. And the more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, that's actually right. He's had a chance to play 30 minutes in the first game, 60 minutes in the second game, and he'll come back to Arsenal better for that, you would think now. I'm still not sure this is a game he's going to bring him in for, though. I would still lean towards Partey continuing in that role with Rice and Trossard, I think. I'm not
Then you
sure.
can't play Merino against Liverpool, probably. I mean, we know that Arteta has given debuts to new signings or full starts to new signings against the best of the best, but that was probably more out of necessity than desire. I
Well,
think,
Calafiori at City.
yeah, I think if Merino doesn't start at the Vitality, especially considering that they're going to be fairly similar sort of opponents. I know that Liverpool are a lot better, but there's energy to both these teams that I think suits Merino. But you couldn't chuck him in against Liverpool. I don't. You could. I might probably overstating it and say you couldn't, but I don't think Arteta would.
Do you
So
think
then
if he's
you're
playing Trossard and Havertz as a 2 almost, you play Merino and Rice as a pair then? Because
that's one thing
see,
I'm
a
a bit
lot of
skeptical.
reason he's been brought in. Looking at what Mikel said there is, getting into the box and being that threat in the box. But if you've just got Rice or on his own, and you've got Trossard and Havertz almost operating as a pair as forwards, is that going to leave you a little bit exposed? Do you think?
I seem to remember I watched quite a lot of Real Sociedad in the Champions League last season, and they had that sort of weird like 4-2-4-ish feel that Arsenal have, where there's certainly a 4-2-3-1 where Merino was a little bit deeper. But it is my immediate concern as well is I see how it fits with Ødegaard really nicely, where Rice is a pure 6, Merino is an 8 as a double pivot. It might. I don't think it will be anything like this bad, but you can almost sort of see it like faint Lampard Gerrard to it. I mean, we've never seen them play like together from the start in the game, so this is totally just speculation on my behalf. But they're both so sort of box to boxy when they want to be that it's you would be like, are you sure you both know who goes and who stays? Because maybe for other viewers around the world they won't understand this, but Charles and I, we've spent 10 years of our life being like, yeah, no, it's fine. Good midfielders, they'll know when to go and when to stay. And sometimes it just takes a lot of time on the training ground. So that's my worry as well. I think the Merino or Partey is probably the big question mark I have, and one where I wouldn't be surprised with either.
Yeah. I feel almost like I'm not sure Marino's done enough to earn his place in the team yet. I still wonder if he needs to do that. Just because I think Partey went into international break playing very well. He'd got himself up to speed. It was his best performance of the season. I think it'd be incredibly harsh almost to take that shirt off him. I'm just not sure, as a brand new signing who's come in, had a couple of sub appearances, I'm not sure he's done enough to wrestle that shirt away from him yet. I think he needs to maybe earn it a little bit more, if you see what I mean. I think it'd be quite harsh for Partey, who basically seems to have given up the opportunity of going to play to Ghana to have a bit of a rest to then lose.
But they really need him, apparently.
Yeah, well, they've struggled. They only picked up 1 point from 2 games against Sudan, and they're not going to qualify. It looks like for AFCON now, which is amazing when you look at the quality of that squad and the players they've got involved in that squad, and to miss out on AFCON, it's first time in 20 years. It's going to be,
and that's not this coming January, but the next one, isn't it?
Yes,
it's not, because it was supposed to be a summer one.
I'm not sure when it is. It's not this January. Surely it's not, or is it? Well, so let's do.
No, 2025. It starts in 2025.
Yeah, which is January.
Ends in 2026. Yeah. No, it starts in December 2025.
Oh, does it? Okay, cool.
We're in the clear.
We are in the clear, yeah. But Partey doesn't look like he'd be going anyway because they're not going to qualify. So yeah, I think Partey starts. In terms of the other decisions they've got to make, obviously it looks like Havertz is going to be fine. Saka and Martinelli will have to wait and see. I mean, like you, Mikel will flat back this one tomorrow. I'm absolutely sure.
So boring.
It will be the classic Arteta. He will not want to give Bournemouth a sniff of what's going on in this one. So you can already see the response. It'll be, we've got a training session later, then we'll make a decision. It'll be exactly.
I bet he will like spread doubt over Saka in particular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I imagine he will.
Yeah,
because I think those two, they're so important to the team and the setup that he will want keep Bournemouth guessing as long as possible in terms of what he might do. Because if they don't play, then obviously you're going to have a completely different looking Arsenal team, and the threat's going to be completely different. Yeah. But I think the fact that they didn't rush Martinelli back, and certainly from conversations I had this week, was they were quite calm about him staying over in Brazil. So there was obviously had some good conversations with the medical staff over there and being like, well, okay, we don't need to rush him back. He can just come back as planned on the jet with Gabriel and the other London-based Brazilians after the match. So you'd think if they were really worried, they'd have got him back as soon as possible, wouldn't they? But they didn't. They didn't do that. And obviously, Lee Carsley, like you said, gave certainly quite a strong indication that Bukayo has a good chance of being available for this weekend as well. So, yeah.
No wonder he can't get the top jobs, giving away team news like that.
Yeah. If they don't, would you agree with me? Would you be like? Would you look at
Abandon
potentially
hope.
Sterling left and Jesus right, or would you do something different?
The other option, I suppose, is something like drop Havertz. Oh no, Nwaneri at the 10, Havertz, Trossard left, Jesus or Sterling right. Yeah, I would do what you do. Yeah, I think that's the better way to do it.
Yeah, I think it's his only option, but hopefully that's worst case scenario. I can't imagine that is going to be the case. What are you thinking for the game on Saturday? How do you think it's going to go?
I think it'll be a slog that Arsenal eventually sort of run out 2-0 winners in. Best case scenario is they get that first goal early. They should be good. I think this is a really interesting. It feels like 7 games through, and you know, sort of the data nerds out there will sort of tell you at 7 games you've got a pretty good idea that sort of the trends you're seeing and expected goals and, you know, even in points, goal difference, all those things, they're starting to be things you can project going forwards. But with Arsenal, I don't really think that's true yet because red cards, difficult fixtures and all that. So this feels like a proper game to test who they are. And because you and I have long been of the opinion that who they are is at the very least contenders till the last mile of the title race, I think they will eventually win this well. 2-0.
Yeah, was it?
I know you don't like doing scores, do you?
No, it was 4-0 last season, wasn't it? They've got
entirely different team.
Yeah, completely different.
Even
Bournemouth.
with the same
I remember
players.
coming away from that game thinking Bournemouth were absolutely nailed on relegation last season, and they turned it around so well. Fair play to them. They're a completely different team once they got used to Iriola's way of thinking. I can't imagine it's going to be anywhere near as comfortable as that this time around. But fingers crossed they're getting it done. They're wearing the 3rd kit for it. I was trying to think. They've not worn that yet this season, have they?
No, it's not a very Mikel Arteta kit, is it?
It's not
obviously
very Mikel Arteta.
red
It's the type of kit that he will bin off after a couple of games quite happily, I think, and do everything he can to avoid playing in it. My kids love it. They've both got it.
I love it. It's an awesome kit.
Yeah, but it is one that you look at and you think, I don't think Mikel's going to like that very much. I don't think he's going to want to use that too much. We've seen it before. When the pink kit that Saliba scored in at Bournemouth, actually, wasn't it? That was definitely Mikel bin that off after.
I think it was the only time it was worn.
No, they wore against Crystal Palace the 2-game week, the opening night, wasn't it?
Yeah,
they won there. They won at Bournemouth, and then it was never to be seen again. Of which I think was definitely a Mikel Arteta decision.
That's somewhat. If you're going to the presser, that is a great question to ask him.
I'm not going to the presser, unfortunately. 10 o'clock.
If you're watching this.
They've moved it. It's 10 o'clock. Does Mikel not know when they do 10 o'clock presses? That rules me out because of the school run. It makes it impossible for me to get there in time. Need it 1:30 on a Friday. It should be written in stone so that I can go.
Yes, no, they have.
Yeah, 10 a.m. tomorrow. So no, it's not going to be me asking for that one. So you're predicting a comfortable win?
Comfortable on paper. Tricky but well earned, if you know what I mean.
Okay, so a difficult game, but ends up being, a couple of late goals maybe to put the gloss on it. Kind of like the Arsenal women's game yesterday, which I don't know if you saw or not, 4-1, but had a nice scoreline look, but it wasn't really as comfortable as potentially that scoreline suggested. A couple of good late goals late on that turned that round.
Progress, at least. I mean, how dispiriting that has been.
It's been a tough week for them. It was a really tough week for them, wasn't it? It felt inevitable that Jonas was going to have to go after that.
I mean, yeah, rightly so. The standards at Arsenal women, and whenever you talk to players, people associated with it, the standards are stratospheric, and rightly so. And at that level, you can be a very capable manager, which I'm sure Jonas Adval is, but still not be good enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. Right, let's quickly shift, as we are still in international break, quickly shift to England. Ace got in touch here. Says, as respected sports journalists, does that describe us?
Debatable.
Respected sports journalist. What do you think of the state of British sports media after the announcement of Thomas Tuchel as England manager? I mean, I kind of had my say on it this morning. I thought, did you see the Daily Mail's back page yesterday?
That was. You can understand why no one put their byline on that.
No,
Like,
it was
screams Jeff
comment.
Powell.
Yeah, it was comment, wasn't it? It was not it wasn't a bylined one.
I mean, I think you can have. I think it's an understandable view to want your nation to be, to want international football as a whole to be about one nation's resources against the other. And to be honest, I think if it was Thomas Tuchel against Thomas Smith and they had the exact same CV, I would be all for pick the English guy. I thought what was ludicrous about that Mail back page in particular is they were like, oh, we think the England job should be for an English manager. Oh, but we'd have been fine with Pep Guardiola. It's sort of like, no, you either think it's for that or you don't. You don't sort of get to pick and choose. I mean, personally, I don't particularly see that England are the sort of top nation that gets to take this view of, oh, we're so good that we'll just trust what we've got. That I nearly wrote in the piece I did on this that I don't think England have produced a world-class manager since Brian Clough. I thought that was maybe going to be harsh on Robson and Venables, but I mean, certainly since then, they have not produced a world-class manager. That's 40 years. We're not producing coaches, and that's a big existential problem, but I don't understand why we should be like, well, we won't win the World Cup until we can produce good coaches. I think Tuchel's a fantastic appointment. I think he's really great guy, really good guy. Also, because I mean, no one would have had a problem with Arsene Wenger getting the job. So basically, we're sort of talking about how English does someone feel. I remember interviewing.
I think some people might have had a problem with Arsene Wenger. Maybe none is stretching it.
But I mean, I remember interviewing Tuchel like 4 months into his time at Chelsea, and no word of a lie, the guy loves living in London. Maybe that doesn't make you British yet, but plenty of British people don't really like being British. I don't think you sort of have to be born here to embrace this country's values. And
he clearly does. He clearly does. You get that. You can tell that he does. I mean, I think it's a perfectly good appointment. I like you. Obviously, if there was a brilliant English choice out there, then you would probably prefer to go for the Englishman because it just makes more sense. It looks better. You kind of, like you said, you'd love it to be country against country because this whole idea of international football. But the fact is there isn't one. And so what are you going to do? You're going to go for an inferior pick just because he's English. It makes absolutely no sense. Like I've seen Carragher and Neville both ranting about this, and I was just thinking I would dearly love them to come up with who they should have got then. And if they were going to say, I don't know, I'd just pick a English coach out who's somewhere in the Championship or something like that. And okay, let's see what your reaction is if Liverpool were to appoint them to Carragher. Would you be happy with that? Or would you think, why on earth have we just done that when we could have got out and got someone from Europe? You would want the best possible manager to manage Liverpool. So why would you not want the best possible appointment for England? And for me, I don't love Thomas Tuchel. I've got to say, I've never really been on the train of him being one of Europe's elite coaches, like lots of people are.
I'm driving that train.
I know you really like Thomas Tuchel, but I've just never really got that from him. I think he's a very good coach. You don't win what he's won if you're not. But I don't see him as absolutely elite. I don't like what he's done at a lot of the clubs and how it's all ended and how quickly he seems to move and fall out and stuff like that. But he's clearly a good coach, and he was the best available coach, I think, out there. If you weren't going to go and get Pep, which clearly I imagine they didn't get the encouragement they needed from Pep, and so they thought we're not going to get him. So where else do you go? Where Thomas Tuchel's available. He's a very good coach with an excellent pedigree, who knows the Premier League, who's been in the Premier League, who knows the players. Just makes absolute perfect sense to make that appointment and going and getting someone else who isn't as good as him, but is English. Why would you do that? I just don't get the argument. And in answer to the question, and I've said it, some of the treatment of the way it's been dressed up and spun, I just think it's been just not good enough at all. It's been, I mean, the Mail, especially that back page was xenophobic, racist, whatever you want to call it. It was the fact that German was capped up and stuff. I mean, it's just so outdated and bollocks, frankly. It really, really is. And yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what he can bring. It's 18 months. He's basically been brought in to win the World Cup. That is very, very clear.
Is it incredibly cool though that we're like having that comment? It was like, well, we better win the World Cup, and you're like, I remember when that just was an impossible dream, and you've got.
But it's the next step. I mean, it is the next step, isn't it? And I know there's the argument, oh, they've moved away from the whole St George's Park model of doing everything for St George's Park, bringing up the coaches and moving people up and promoting them and all that stuff. And I've seen people arguing that as well. But again, Carsley was the under-21s coach. He clearly wasn't ready to be England coach. And so when that became blatantly obvious and apparent to everyone, then you had to go and make a decision. Now, I think they've made a good appointment.
A month after everyone was saying he should have the job.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you reckon this means for Ben White? Can you imagine Ben White looking at this and thinking he's someone I want to work for?
Yes. I do think we sometimes sort of turn the Ben White thing into a deeply personal thing where kind of from what I understand of it, he's just not that bothered. He didn't enjoy his time with England under Southgate. And then he was like, no, thanks. But I could see him, if Tuchel can engage him and, White's under no obligation to feel engaged, I can see him flying. I suppose it would depend on the system, but I'm thinking how Tuchel lined up at Chelsea. If you had Ben White on the right of a back three with license to get forward a bit and Alexander-Arnold at wing back and Bukayo Saka ahead of those two, wow, that would be very fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's as easy a sort of resolution in terms of Tuchel just picking up the phone and saying, look, Ben, I'm not Gareth Southgate. And I haven't got
exactly. You've got to make him want to be.
Yeah. I don't think it's as simple as that, but I think it definitely raises the possibility of White returning. Obviously, Saka and Declan Rice also going to be under his wing. Interesting to see how it goes. But thank you, Ace, for getting in touch. Appreciate that. Right, this is another one I thought would be quite interesting. This is from Yaffe, I think it is. Says, your vids are part of my daily routine and a must for me. Thank you very much. What do you make of Sir Alex's treatment at United? And do you think Wenger should or can have a role at the club in any capacity that is meaningful? Cheers from Ethiopia. What did you make of that? Ineos giving Sir Alex the boot.
I mean, first of all, I was quite amazed that Manchester United have been paying Sir Alex Ferguson £2 million a year.
I was quite amazed by that.
To have cameras cut to him every game?
Yeah. The only thing is with that is they can probably afford to do that because of everything that Alex Ferguson has done. And he is Manchester United. Manchester United are now, well, actually, I was going to say they are what they are now because of Ferguson and not because they've dropped off alarmingly since he's gone. But they are aspiring to get back to what they were because when Ferguson was in charge. And so maybe you look at that and think, well, they're just $2 million a year. Yes, to us, it seems madness that you're paying someone to basically sit in the stands and be an ambassador, whatever that means, for £2 million a year. But it's not just anyone. It is Sir Alex Ferguson, the man who basically built Manchester United up into, the world's best football team.
Yeah, but that's why I probably would have sort of spoken to, and I know he remains the sort of ambassador and he's sort of non-exec director. He doesn't really have much of a say. I think the sort of where you then landed yourself at is it sort of you're not giving Sir Alex that sort of annual reminder, like you say, of like, we're a club that will one day be worth £1 billion thanks to you, Sir Alex. So here's 2 million. But you sort of still are going to have some of the downsides of he will still be there. Every time something goes wrong, it will still be, oh, that wouldn't have happened on his watch. Cut to him at Old Trafford. It seems the worst of both worlds. I mean, and
but I don't think that's not why they've got rid of him, though, is it? They've got rid of him purely for cost cut. Yeah. They're doing.
I think the truth is, like, if you're that obsessed with cost cutting, do you know what's a really effective way of cutting your costs? Get rid of some of your rubbish players that you pay tens of millions a year to, and do it properly. Like, do what Edu did to Casemiro and to Anthony, because they are complete drains on your resources and they provide no greater value than than you would get from sort of Eric Ten Hag being able to knock on Sir Alex Ferguson's door and get advice, which I'm sure he does. I'm sure they don't make a fuss about it because they're very worried about what happened, with Sir Matt Busby all those years ago. Yeah, I think it's all like that. And I got frustrated when Arsenal were sort of cutting back on their making so many redundancies as well. At the time, they were spending an awful lot on wages of bad players, but they did address it. And I think United need to start doing that before they make so many people redundant.
Yeah, I can't see Wenger coming back and doing any sort of role at Arsenal once he's done with FIFA. I imagine after FIFA, that will be it for him.
Yeah.
We might see him around the club more than we have done because we've barely seen him. But I can't imagine he would ever take up a sort of role now like the Ferguson role at Man United.
A lot harder for him. It was the people that said it was a sacking were, and I remember that really upset people on the day. It was never quite that, but I don't think he was in the mood to. It wasn't a spur of the moment decision from Arsene Wenger that he decided he didn't want to be Arsenal manager anymore. It was not something he did in isolation in the way that Alex Ferguson, to the best of my knowledge, pretty much effectively just woke up one day and was like, "No, I'm done here." I think it was a lot more painful for Arsene Wenger. So it's nice for him when he comes back, I think, but even then, there's always a little touch of melancholy, I feel, when you see him.
Yeah. Arsene. Those were the days. Right, a couple of questions here that I thought were quite interesting to go over. One from Kume, who says, "Love the show as always. I'm curious, do you think the long-term future for Calafiori and Timber would be to remain as fullbacks or to drift into centre-back with time?" And then following on from that, Tom says, "Hypothetically, if Saliba is to go to Madrid at some point, do you think Arsenal sign a star centre-back or use an existing player to replace him and then sign a project centre-back? In either scenario, what would your ideal replacement be?" And I suppose you can kind of compare the questions there, because if they were to let go, you've basically got Timber and Calafiori, who we know are centre-backs by trade, really, playing as fullback at the moment. So, yeah, long-term, do you think those two end up staying out wide, or can you see a way? I saw, was it Van der Vaart? It might have been Van der Vaart. An old-school Dutch player was speaking during the international break about Timber and saying it was doing him no good playing as fullback because he is a centre back. He's saying playing at left back, right back, he can do it well, but he should be playing at centre back. And this move to Arsenal hasn't gone very well. I can't remember who it was, but I mean, I don't know.
That's so nonsensical. It sounds like Van der Vaart.
Yeah, that's why I think it's why I pulled Van der Vaart out.
While you're looking that up, I'll sort of throw some thoughts at that. I mean, one person I would add into this whole grouping is Ben White. It's going to sort of really be a right-footed centre back, isn't it? So, in terms of the Saliba replacement, I don't see it being Calafiori, assuming Gabriel's still there as well. I think if anything happened to Gabriel, I would imagine that Calafiori would be the guy to step in ahead of Givio, ahead of someone like Tomiyasu. But I think with him, there's so little to go off, and it's also mad and rampaging that I'm like, let's see a bit more of the composure, Ricardo, before we talk. Have you seen his interview with Roman Kemp?
Yes, well, I've seen it. I've seen the clip of it when he talks about celebrating Mikel Arteta. That was very fun. Yeah.
Until we can just sort of remember where we are at all times, Ricardo, let's put you at left back. Thank you. Timber's interesting. Obviously, the immediate thing is height, but I think sometimes that gets overstated. I was saying the same thing about Lisandro Martinez, and his problems as a centre back aren't that he's too short. So I certainly wouldn't be against that. He's got all the ball playing qualities. I mean, he can play wherever. If you told me Timber's future was as a DM, as a central midfielder, I would feel that was plausible. If Saliba goes, touch wood. I've got some wood. I think you'd have to just try and sign someone, I think. But I'd be open to trying Ben White there again. I thought we forget he was a very good centre-back for Arsenal next to Gabriel. That partnership after a slow start was really effective in that one season together. So
it really was.
If I can't get a superstar, I'd probably use Ben White.
Yeah, I mean, they've got so many options, which is a good thing. But hopefully, we don't even have to think about it because Saliba's going to go absolutely nowhere. I couldn't find who it was who was having a go at Timber. It wasn't Van der Vaart. It sounds absolutely like something he would say. But yeah, someone was criticising the move and the fact he's playing at fullback and suggesting it was doing him his long-term sort of future no good.
Very Dutch sort of critique, that, isn't it?
Yeah, I remember when he signed him, I did an interview of Jaap Stam, and Stam was saying that he felt that centre back was his best position, but he could play fullback. Obviously, he arrived as centre back, didn't he? That's where he had played before.
Yeah, that's quite interesting that Stam would say that, because they're physically very different, and they would play centre back in such different ways.
Be interesting if Timber and White are both fit on Saturday. What he does there, I think it's Tim. I think Timber's got that spot at the moment.
I think so too.
Yeah, I think we Timber Calafiori, the two fullbacks, if everyone's fit.
Oh, I just can't get my head around the idea of dropping Ben White, but you're right.
I know
it's not a drop either, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, and then you would imagine that Ben White would probably play on Tuesday night potentially against Shakhtar. And I just think it's the case you just got to manage those minutes. But you've got so many good fullbacks now, options, that you're in that position where you've just got to balance the minutes and give everyone as much game time as possible. Had you heard anything about the Tomiyasu setback that the rumours were doing the rounds during the break?
I'd heard nothing.
No, I'd heard nothing on it. I tried to find out, and I didn't hear anything. So I'm hoping they were wrong, because that'd be a real shame if anything had happened to him. But I've not been able to confirm that yet. Right, a couple more questions now. We've got to do some transfer talk, because well, it's just every week it seems to be still a lot of talk about
nearly January.
We are getting towards January. What are we in now? We're in October now, so it's not too far away. Probably acceptable to start looking towards the January window. Not that I think Arsenal are going to be particularly busy. Meek says, what do you think Arsenal can do in January to get over the line? And Ricky says, it's a bit early, I know, but looking towards January, do you think we'll reinforce, if we do, loans or permanent signings? In what areas? If it were up to me, would be looking to do some summer business early if possible, getting youth in as regularly as possible, and if possible, another Sterling type for the attack on a short-term loan, 6 to 18 months. Love the show. Congrats on 100k. Thank you very much, Ricky. Yeah, I mean, what do you think Arsenal can do in January to get over the line? I don't think they're going to have a really busy January. I still think they'll keep the powder dry mainly for the summer. But obviously, I think there is money there to spend there is money there to spend if something comes up that they think, you know what, this will potentially help us go over the line. And we saw what they did a couple of Januaries back when it was Trossard. Who came in that window? Trossard? Jorginho, Kivior, yeah. You know, he spent quite a bit of money that January, and that was the first year of the title run, wasn't it? And they tried to get themselves over the line with that, and they were willing to potentially sign Caicedo and Mudryk that window as well before those deals didn't happen. So maybe they will look to really bring someone in they think can add to the squad in Jan and get them over the line.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't rule it out, but I'm pretty skeptical. Just because
you look at the areas, what areas would you do in January to I mean, again, you just go back to attack, don't you? Really, maybe one more attacker.
I'd be I think it never hurts, does it, to have one more guy on loan that you can throw off the bench when you're hunting a goal, because, you know, I mean, it maybe even, you know, sometimes you think it would be nice to have a Havertz-esque tall centre forward for if it's just like hit the ball in the mixer, let's see what bounces. And I mean, it's Mikel Arteta's
Alexander Isak on loan.
Get him in. But that's the thing, isn't it? You know, what Arsenal need, and like, you know, you talk about bringing forward summer business, you're talking about maybe trying to buy a potentially world-class striker, potentially world-class wide forward, another option to strengthen your midfield, who would be somewhere between third and fourth choice, you know, to rotate with a Merino. Those players are just not going to become available in January.
Just feels much more summer. It's summer business, isn't it? It's summer business.
Yeah. Of course, you know, we don't know what injuries will happen. I mean, I'm already almost a little bit relieved. I reported a few pretty much after the August window closed, because I knew they were going to make an offer and they never were able to because they couldn't shift space. But I sort of reported that Al Nassr were going to put in an offer for Kovacic in January, and you're like, oh, as you well know, like when you report these sorts of things, especially far out, you sort of exist in a constant fear that something will change, and people go, oh, you were wrong all along, and you're like, I wasn't, I just reported the information I had at the time. And then the one bright side of sort of what happened to Rodri for me personally was the knowledge that, you know, that story's all changed now, and Man City aren't going to let Kovacic go even for crazy money.
Yeah, I don't. It's January. It's just a deal. It's just a window that I can't see too much happening in. I really can't. Like you said, forward maybe if there's someone available, potentially on loan, but I just don't really see a loan signing that comes in January and really changes and moves things on for Arsenal. But we shall see. Someone here is getting in touch about Kelleher, saying being a long-term competition for Raya. Looks like it's going to leave Liverpool in the summer. I really think he could push Raya. As a Republic of Ireland fan, I've seen a lot of him. He's very cool under pressure and good with his feet. Kind of reminds me of Seaman. Well, we're going to get a close-up look of Kelleher next weekend at the Emirates, of course, because he's going to be in goal for a while yet. But look, that's not going to happen. The reason Kelleher wants out of Liverpool because he wants to be a number one somewhere, so he's not going to come and be number two to David Raya. And I still think if Arsenal are going to sign a goalkeeper, or when Arsenal sign a goalkeeper in the summer, it's much more likely to be Juan Garcia than anyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Brian. Kelleher would be fantastic for Arsenal, but yeah, not going to happen. I think he should go somewhere really good. I don't see why somewhere like Chelsea that still look like they need a number one don't go and pay an awful lot of money for Kelleher. I think if he was starting week in, week out, he'd be in the top echelon of Premier League goalkeepers, but below the magnificent David Raya.
Yeah, another clean sheet for him.
All he does.
2 clean sheets, wasn't it?
I imagine his washing machine must be gathering dust with all those clean sheets.
Yeah, and well, Arsenal away this weekend, so hopefully that means another clean sheet, because when they're away, it tends to mean clean sheets. Unlike at home, it's still weird, isn't it? Arsenal concede so many more goals at home than they do away from home. Bizarre.
Just, silly, sloppy switch off mistakes so often, aren't they? I don't know what that is.
Yeah, well, hopefully another clean sheet on Saturday. You going on Saturday?
I am not. I'm going to see The Last Dinner Party, if you're aware of them.
Nope.
No, indie band.
Nope.
So to sort of do that while getting my work done, I'm doing the early game on Saturday, which is Tottenham against West Ham.
Oh, is it? At where? Spurs or West Ham?
At Spurs. Yeah, it's a great game. I think there's work to be done for Ange, isn't there? And pressure building on Julian Lopetegui.
Yeah, they got a win, didn't they, just for the international break?
Yeah,
they beat someone quite comfortably at home, West Ham, just to ease the pressure.
Ipswich.
Yes, Ipswich, that was it. And Spurs obviously delighted us all with that collapse against Brighton, which was nice. Ended their decent little run.
I mean, look, I'll be honest, I'm going to it because we all now need to go to like 30 games a season to keep our accreditation. So
yeah, I'm not anywhere on Saturday. It's my mate is heading off up in sticks with his family and leaving and moving to Australia. And it is his leaving. It is his goodbye send-off on Saturday. So I'm going to have a rare occasion of sitting in the pub, a few beers in, watching Arsenal, 5:30 kickoff, perfect time.
Love it.
Yes, I'm quite looking forward to that. And then having to do a very hungover show on Sunday, reacting to hopefully what has been a very, very good Arsenal win. Right, I think that's about it for today, mate. Thank you very much for joining me. As always, we'll be back tomorrow, next week, I suppose, probably post Champions League.
The world is our oyster.
Maybe Thursday again, I would say. Is Liverpool Sunday? Yeah, it is Sunday.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Thursday or Friday, I imagine we can book this one in for. Until then, have a very good day, mate. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us as always. I'll be back tomorrow morning, as usual, with my usual show. Do it after Mikel's presser, because that's 10 o'clock. So I'll do it a little bit later after that, reacting to what he's had to say or not said, which is probably more likely option when it comes to Mikel Arteta. Anything you want me to discuss in that show, get down into the comments and leave me your questions, your opinions, and everything as usual. Cheers, mate. Have a very good day. Have a good weekend. Enjoy your concert at the weekend, and I'll see you next week.
Cheers. Bye-bye.